Welcome to the iNetrepreneur Radio Show. We are so honored to bring you your host, the ultimate celebritypreneur, connecting businesses and celebrities worldwide. Winner of the Networking Organization of the Year, best-selling author, magazine publisher, trainer, and owner and founder of Network Together and the iNetrepreneur Media Network from magazines, TV, and radio network, we're excited to bring you your host, Mr. Robert W. Jones.
Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to the show today, and I am glad you're here. It's a beautiful Thursday in sunny Phoenix, Arizona, and Today, for me, it's a very, very special day. It's the 13th of May, and you may think like, well, why is the 13th of May so special? You know, and it's because of numbers. You know, numbers and words in my world have always been a fascinating thing for me. You know, and you may ask, well, why do numbers and words mean so much to you? Because everything basically in the world that I used to live in computer programming was zeros and ones. You know, words were actually based upon just zeros and ones, and it's what creates the foundation of what we see in the internet that we have today. And what I love about, May 13th is about 20 years ago, I had started my first company, as an entrepreneur on this day, actually it's 21 years ago today. So I'm just here to celebrate it with you. And quite frankly, it wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the courage to step out there, and just be seen, to get myself out there. And it's what I do for our entrepreneurs to this very day. I help them get seen. But with saying that, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they always ask me, what are the secret ingredients of success? And of course, there isn't any one ingredient or even 10 ingredients, and maybe not even 100 ingredients that create success. But I will say this: if you create, or if you embrace a powerful mission, your mission statement and even a monthly mission, and you bring that every day, to the audience that you serve, and then you pair that, and Yolanda and I were talking about this the other day. We were talking about, pairing, wine and cheese, and it's really important. You want to pair your words with your mission, because that's what's going to resonate, with your audience. Then you can do it in person, you can do it through digital marketing, and you can also do it through traditional marketing. But it's really important to resonate, your message with your mission, the methods that you deliver it. And the other thing I want to talk about too is we hear about, facts tell and stories sell. Well, I know one thing. It's kind of like riding a bike. You better have air in both tires, because facts may tell, but if your story doesn't have a point, it's going to fail. Or if you have a great story and no facts to support it, guess what? You're going to fail again. And so my meaning behind that is make sure that you're giving great information. Make sure you make it lively with illustration, and that's with words. And even when we get to Taylor today, that might be with even some type of visualization, because she's our resident expressionist. So today our show is all about creating content, storytelling, and imagery. And I'm really excited to, before I get to that, I just want to remind everyone to like our channel, our Facebook channel. I have some banners here that will go across. You can like us on Facebook, or you can find us on YouTube at iNetrepreneur Radio. So youtube.com, iNetrepreneur Radio. Like us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/iNetrepreneur Radio. I understand no one can spell it. I get it. But, take a snapshot, use your phone, do a screen capture, tattoo it to your hand, and you might be able to get to it. But, also I want to remind everyone that we also put on over 1,000 meetings and events each and every year. You can go to ntevents.net. That's ntevents.net to find one of the meetings that's suitable to you. Well, we have them 5 days a week, every week of the year. Come join us and let's have some fun. So first up today on our show, I am so excited that we have the illustrious, the wonderful, the beautiful, the gal from Ohio, Yolanda Brown. Welcome to the show, Yolanda. How are you?
Thank you, Robert. What a warm and generous invitation to talk to you today. This is fantastic. I'm doing great.
Well, I'm glad you're doing great. I am doing great as well. And one of the things I like about the formula of the Entrepreneur Network is, in many groups, sometimes you may see a person once a month, and or even once a week. But in the Entrepreneur Network, because we have so many opportunities to meet, our how would I say our connection, our conversations, our collaborations come much faster because of all those opportunities. We get to meet, know, like, and what I say, we're know, like, and trust. I always say know, love, and trust much faster. And I always said, and I will talk about this with Diana, I haven't written the book, The Slowest Way to Success, because I probably would think that it would never sell. So, the fastest way to success would probably sell much better than the slowest way to success. And that's why I like this particular type of formula that we have here. And it really isn't about just the relationships, it's about the community. And once you build a community, we police our own, and commerce follows, a little bit. And you've come into the community by fire, and I love it. You keep it hot, just like I call Taylor the hot quesadilla or something like that. So at any rate, let's go back though, Yolanda. Let's talk a little bit about your early childhood. Your parents, like who was influential in your life. What created meaning for you early on. And who provided some inspiration.
I think at the nucleus of who I am is I came from a great family of readers and creatives. They, in some ways, they were very traditional in how that manifested, and in some ways non-traditional. So part of my family had 3 or 4 generations of agricultural people. And my mother was a voracious reader. My dad was a consummate tinkerer. So he was either reading to learn something or reading to teach something. Mm-hmm. And so very early on, I'm surrounded by creatives and I'm surrounded by thinkers. So ultimately at 7, I'm washing dishes. My mother didn't know about child labor laws. And so I'm washing dishes. I'm standing on this little red stool, washing the dishes. I look at my mother and I said, I am going to become a teacher, an artist, and a pastor. And so the trajectory of my life very much went down teaching and visual art my entire life. And I think service and love is my ministry. I hang out in the Church of Entrepreneurs. And anytime I'm confused, I go back to, is this a love moment or a service moment? Yeah. And I get clarity and I get alignment and I get back in step with what I'm supposed to do. So a funny story, my mother says I was delivered with a basket of kittens and I was the cutest one. So she kept me. And so I landed in a really good place to nurture who I was ultimately going to be. So now I'm the wordsmith, CEO and founder of Copywrite Brown, serving from Ohio, spinning out these words like chiclets and chocolates.
I like that. And and people ask me sometimes, why do I bring up the past so much? Because, I say there's 3 things that create a human being. I say it's the nature that you come with, it's the nurture that is delivered to you, and it's the noodle that can trump either. So it's the nature, the nurture, and the noodle. And I think those 3 things create us as human beings, and it's it's our ability to grab what we've been created with and then kind of pair it with how we're nurtured, and to find our own space, find our own voice. And that's what I love about writing. And what you talked about is, did you say baker? Did you say baker early on?
Yes.
Yes. And, and what I think is really interesting about baking, and it's like gardening, and you can't rush certain things. Baking, you can't put a croissant in the oven and just expect it to be done. It takes time to rise. It takes time to get its filling. It takes time to cook at a certain temperature. And if you take it out too early, it's still doughy. If you take it out too late, it's what? It's dry.
Right.
and good content's like that. You can do too much or too little and still come out with a bad result.
Mm-hmm.
But see, what I liked about what you talked about is you talked about serving. You didn't talk about selling. You talked about
Mm-hmm.
how can you serve people. And I wonder if your background doesn't have a little bit to do with it. A lot of people don't know I spent 2 missionary tours. I was a children's minister, when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
along with being a professional juggler, which is another story. But the kids loved it.
Right.
My mom and my mom and my aunt and many of our family members were all teachers, all about serving, all about giving greater good. Was there a person in your life, like my mom was very instrumental and my grandma in my life, who was instrumental in your life growing up?
I was treated like, it was very interesting. Every kid felt like they were the only kid. And again, I would say surrounded by tinkerers and thinkers and readers and creative people. So some of my biggest influence, of course, my mother, because I just felt like she was sort of alchemist. Like we'd lie down to take a nap, we wake up, there's fresh flowers, there's a casserole, there's a cake, the room has been repainted. And no matter what our means were, she was always dynamic in creating a lovely environment. The way that my grandmother like crafted a life after being a farm girl, coming to Ohio, sending herself to cosmetology school to pay for nursing school. Like how did she get that thought from working on the land to I'm going to be a nurse and this is how I'm going to fund it? So the women in my life have been extraordinary, and even shown what the spirit of a phoenix, coming out of a fire, what you can do with the beauty of ashes. So, and then I had great, great teachers. I always say to people, if you have some pretty darn good parents and a few good teachers, there's nothing you can't do. So teachers have been stalwart influence in my life. And one of my teachers, third grade teacher, that cemented for me the idea of being a teacher. I'm like, she had great dresses. She had a cool dog and she giggled. And I was like, you can be a grown up and giggle at your job. I'm going to do
that. and you carry that to today. And that's what I love about you. But, the other things is, and I'm always about fun. I always say, if you're learning and you're having fun, you learn more. If you're doing business and you're having fun, you're going to do more business. If you have fun within the doors of your family home, you become closer. Just like last night, all of us, the boys and my wife and I, we all got in front of this one television show and we were just cracking up. And then all of a sudden we started our own conversations again. I think that there's 2 things that bring family together, and that's food and storytelling.
Yes.
And I think it really comes to why in business it's so important to learn a couple of those things, especially what we can learn from breaking the bread with people, so to speak, and then just telling those stories that evoke certain things. But what I get so frustrated sometimes, Yolanda, is I hear a lot of people attempt to write stories, or they attempt to story tell, but sometimes they don't have a point, or sometimes they don't have a primary aim, or sometimes they don't understand their own company's mission. And so when they start to message and they start to so-called create content, their message gets muddled in the middle. And of course, confusion sets in. And you know what happens when people have a confused mind?
What is
They
that?
don't hire. They don't hire. They don't buy. They don't get an appointment. What do you provide when you sit down for that first time with that business owner and you say, look, hey, I looked at your website, I looked at your bio, I've seen you at a chapter meeting or something like that. How do you just kind of tear through, kind of like the curtain, so to speak, to actually see the vibe of what that business owner is offering? What are some of the things that you ask them and do?
It starts with making their appointment on the calendar. One of the questions for that appointment is, what's making you smile right now? And so I actually, and a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, start with the answer to that question. I asked them, like, so one lady the other day, it was her toy poodle. And the fact that she donates a considerable amount of time to feed the children program. And so I start with what they're joyous about. And I was like, okay, you know how you're feeling right now? Your customers and your followers want to feel exactly like that. That's what you need to lead with in your content. And when we think about your strategy, that should be the goal every time. So, I talk a lot about serving your brand messaging with love and service and humanity. You're not talking to robots.
Yeah.
You're not talking to robots.
And don't get me started on that one. I believe, my dad said, the intelligence of the human being is not by doing things over and over again. It's about doing things that have never been done before.
Amen.
And I thought that was like so amazing to me when my dad, taught me that. And, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it right now when he said that. And I think that's a part of what you need to do when you're talking content development. And I mean, Yolanda, please help me with this. So many people talk about content development. Really, what does that mean? What does it mean to you when you sit down and you say, we need to work on your content? What is your passion coming across to me when you say, look, I hear what you've said, but this is what we're going to say?
Yeah. So I think if I engage the client in thinking about, what do you really, really want to say? If we were sitting across a table having coffee or a bowl of chili, what would you really, really say? That's what we need to get to. We don't need to get to the stave and the standards that people tell you need to do and say. You need to be authentic in every way with that message. And then you need to pick the right platform to serve the message, because what you do on LinkedIn, you're definitely not going to do on Twitter. What you do on Facebook, you won't do on Instagram. So you tweak the message for the audience. And I just say simple things like, when you have a conversation with your grandma versus your girlfriend about the same topic, you're saying it in very different ways, but in both instances, it's a rich messaging moment.
Yeah.
You don't lose anything when you're talking to grandma versus when you're talking to your girlfriend. So how do we do that? And so we talk about, how are you going to solve the pain points and elevate and optimize the life of the people that are following you and buying your products and service. The only reason you're in business is to make humanity better. It's not to make a whole bunch of money, which is a wonderful, wonderful residual effect. But you're trying to elevate our experience while we're here. So let's cut away everything that doesn't serve that moment and focus on how we're going to elevate and how we're going to expand this experience called a human experience. Whether that you're a repairman for refrigerators, or you're a florist, or you're a sex educator. Mm-hmm. How are we going to get to that moment?
Well, and my other question too is, how do you get to that moment? Because one thing I found is people can be stubborn. And people sometimes, you know what I mean? I mean, they're like, wait a minute, but I've been taught how to do this, and it needs to be that way. And my marketing person said this, and then I had some other expert say that. Now you're telling me, all my life I thought it was an apple, and you're telling me it's a banana? No, it can't be.
Well, one of the first things I say, especially when I'm asking people to refer me in my business, is they need to be coachable. Mm-hmm. And I say, show up the way a first grader or fifth grader would. They already know they don't know everything. They're there to be coached. They're there to be open and expansive and take in the thing that's going to elevate what they'll do to the next thing. So part of the strategy is like planning. Let's plan. Like, let's get you from a moment where you're feeling anxious and chaotic, and let's plan out what you're going to do. That might include, maybe we have a template for them to use every time they do something. Then one of the reasons they're not doing posting content on social media or something, because they don't know when to do it. So we develop a content strategy. We develop a content calendar for them. We work with them on topics and themes that are in alignment, parallel or perpendicular to their brand. And we show them how to use curated content so you don't have to make everything from scratch. And because they're expert in their field, I constantly are telling people, get your professional bio written, because you're going to have a moment when Robert Jones is going to call you and you're going to need your logo, your headshots, your bio. Don't get caught with your socks down. Be ready. So
Right.
all of that goes into the some of the content strategy to help people really, really shine.
Yeah.
And you can be a 2-person business and look as big as Amazon if your content is just astronomically showing up for you, and it's working for you when you're sleeping.
Yeah. And I was going to go to that point. You just led me into it. I think many times people forget that content is always working for you or against you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you actually need to do an audit to say, like some of us have been on the internet like 20 years, like me, 15 years, even 5 years. And all of a sudden, even the content you have out there that may need to be changed, it may need to be redelivered. You've changed. And I think that that's something that you do, and you develop the content, and you talked about planning. It's like, who are you right now, and where are we going? And I think that's why. What is another area? Like one more area that entrepreneurs get hung up on, and how do you get them to cross that line?
One of the biggest concerns, and even though I've been doing this for 10 years, one of the biggest concerns I still see, people don't know what they need. And they're so wedded to doing everything themselves, they can't see sometimes the value of partnering with a vendor that will give you your time back and let you serve in your passive position in your business. If you're doing 6 things every week that give you anxiety, that make you upset, that make you feel inconfident and diminished, that those things are depleting your energy. So the things that you're really good at, you have half the energy to go and serve from that moment, from that position in your business. So a lot of conversations I have, I think I do as much conversations around clarity and strategy than I do actually writing something for people.
And I like that, because if a person's in a stress state, the voice that's carried, and that goes straight into writing, is going to be much different than if they're not in a stress state.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, our segment, I told you, it goes by way too darn quickly. Yolanda, I have your information scrolling across the bottom here. Tell us about the best ways to get a hold of you, or maybe even what chapters you go to, so people can get the experience of Copywrite Brown.
Well, I'm in the iNetpreneur network with the Southern California chapter. You can find me all places on the internet streets at Copywrite Brown. That's COPYWRITE Brown. Thanks so much.
Right. Yolanda, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a pleasure having you, and I think we're going to have to do this again, don't you think?
Yes, sir. Part 17. I'm looking forward to it.
Part 17. All right. We have 15 in between. All right. Thank you, Yolanda.
Take good care.
Network together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
I definitely appreciate Yolanda coming on today. And, I can see in her heart, why she's so passionate about people. I mean, looking at becoming a teacher or being a pastor, her life of service. And I think it's kind of like what a baker does. She lives her life like a baker does through food, except her baked goods are words. And so I really appreciate Yolanda Brown being on here today, and I'm looking forward to having her on show. My next guest on the show today is Diana Hooker. And I always love to tease her. I always say, gosh, with a name like Hooker, you got how to book her. So, Diana, I'm so thankful that you're on the show today. And I'm really grateful to Yolanda. You were probably listening to us a little bit. And I think she's just remarkable. But thank you for being here today.
I am excited to be here with you today, Robert. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I want to invite you because I feel like we've had a special place in some of our conversations before. I mean, it's really interesting because there's not a lot of people where you can call them. I call them the pick up the phone crowd. You can just pick up a phone and you just can call them at any time. And I get a call from you or you get a call from me, and we're reading to each other over the phone. And it's just like, I'm like, okay, it's been a couple of weeks. Where's she at? Where's she at? And I really look forward to it because not only is it something that resonates with me, because I believe in Entrepreneur Network, the first thing you want to do is find the power of your voice. But once you find the power of your voice, please have something to say. And like with Yolanda and like with you, Diana, you help people bring that out a little bit. And I think that we had a few guide steps and guide points in my segment with Yolanda on, developing content and overcoming hurdles. And a lot of it really is the entrepreneur, and overcoming themselves sometimes even. But I loved what she said about being coachable, which you do a lot of coaching yourself. But like Yolanda, you haven't always been a writer in the sense that this is a part of your career, but it's always been a part of your passion. It's been your interest. Let's go back with your earlier childhood and tell us a little bit about your upbringing and some of the experiences that have added to kind of like the flavor of your cake now.
Right. Well, as you know, because you teased me about being from Cincinnati, Ohio. So I had to tell you that I wasn't just from Cincinnati. I was actually born in Harlan, Kentucky, which is a small, community in Southeast Kentucky in the Appalachian Mountains, coal mining country. And so you said that was a good thing, right?
Yes.
Yes,
it is.
Growing up there was a different culture. I would come and visit my cousins that lived in Ohio, but it was definitely a different culture. And just being in that type of environment, and my parents divorced when I was very young. And so I spent a lot of time with my maternal grandmother, and she was such a huge influence. And just like, talking about those stories and content, I loved when her brothers and sisters would come and visit, and I would just be sitting in the floor playing, listening to the stories that they were telling each other. And that was a huge influence on what I recognized in what I write about today, which, that's what I usually read to you, are stories that I'm writing,
Yes.
from my book that are, from my past.
Yeah. Well, and my grandmother was important in my life. Your grandmother was important in your life. And one of the things that I've found is, and I say this, and I said it at the mastermind that we had the other day, is I go looking for the oldest person in the room to talk to. And I know it might be contrary. Let's look for the young buck who knows all the technology and they grew up in the digital age and stuff like that. But there's something about longevity and perspective and living a life worth living, both the mistakes you've had and the victories that you had and are going to have. And I love those conversations. So tell me a little bit more about your grandmother and some of the things that you may have learned from her.
Oh my goodness. Well, to address just what you said, I always tend to go for the oldest people as well because of their stories. They're just so amazing what they've experienced. And if you think about it, they didn't have the technology that we do now. So it was about the conversations and in making those memories. And that's what it was with my grandmother. She was actually extremely quiet. She was the calm person. But she always had the wisest words. Whenever I would tell her about something that was going on at school, maybe someone who didn't like me. And she was just like, well, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
And I would try to do, I'm like, okay, this person doesn't like me. They're saying negative things about me. Well, I think they're pretty. I would try to find something, nice to say about them versus saying the negative. So it's really those wise words and just kind of like learning from that. And I'm going to tell you this funny story. This one's not in my book, but it's just a funny story because, back in the day when I was growing up, definitely they did not spare the rod. Like if you got in trouble, you would get spanked, right? And but I would always run, and I said that's how I learned to dance, because I would try to move to keep from getting hit. Well, one time I was walking past my grandmother and she hit me, and I was like, why did you do that for? She goes, for all those times I couldn't catch you before.
I love it. Oh my goodness. Well, you talk about the stick, Diana. I will share with you this. I happen to grow up in Texas, so I'm kind of a part of that southern flair, and I happen to be one of the lucky graduates. It was I grew up in the last year that they could actually use switches in school, so
Oh,
we still had corporal punishment in school when I went through, and so if you did something wrong, you get 3 whacks to the back, and so
yeah.
so I know those days. I lived it at home and at school. Those good old days. Sometimes those good old days come back, and sometimes they hurt your bottom when you see it, when you start talking about them. But when it comes to developing content, though, I'm a firm believer that the best content does have some form of story in it. But I also am a firm believer that if your content and your story doesn't really have a primary aim to its intended audience, it's just talking. And I think one of the things that we learned with Yolanda is she has to understand a lot about that business owner, and the motivations of the audience that they're intending to talk to, and what I want to talk to you about is, what are some of the ways that we can dive in deeper in the content by using some maybe some storytelling truisms, so to speak. I'm just making up a word, maybe truism or something like that. But they say you have to evoke some emotion, or have the senses, or I get it, but what are some things that you have found that really have helped you? And one of the biggest reasons I brought you on the show is because by trade and profession, you're an accountant. I mean, I don't know how you make that very sexy, but somehow you've done that. So, tell us a little bit of a way how you storytell into your accounting a little bit.
Right. Well, I'm sure you've heard, whenever you're doing something, that you have the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So also with the story, like when I write, accounting and my writing and my coaching seem so far apart, but it is very emotional and it's about the feeling. So I think when I'm writing, and especially when I'm trying to develop content for something like a story that I'm writing in my book, what is the emotion that I am trying to evoke from this piece? So, and that's the same thing when you're developing content for your marketing or for anything that you're writing. What is it that you want to evoke in this, what I'm writing? Is it for them to call you? Is it for them to, buy something or whatever? But it's an emotion, right? And so how am I going to evoke this emotion with this? And you paint a picture with that. So then the story tells that, right?
Yeah, and well, and I'm writing this down because, at the end of the day, as a business owner, you want to have your right audience, and I've heard of inspire action in every audience, and I think that we could also look at that as evoke an emotion, for every action, and I think that might be a way to look at it as well, So, when it comes to some of these, like illustrate something, when it comes to like illustrating the way to get to someone to move or to someone to act, are there certain cues, I guess, that help create that inspiration to move to action? I mean, I don't know if it's fear or feeding your kids, or some people are being the best because there's so many different personalities as well. What are some of the things that you found that can help trigger this?
So that's a really good question. I mean, a lot of tactics can be fear, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people will say, well, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. I hate evoking fear. That's the one I do not want to do. So I usually will go for what it is that you want, right? That love, that's going to create the situation that you want in your life, and I really liked what Yolanda said And it just left my mind, but it was about time. It just left me. I hate when that happens,
Uh,
but regardless, what do you want to happen? What kind of situation do you want to create? And then that's the picture that you paint. Because would you prefer to go into a place where you feel love and you feel happiness, or a place that you're running from, right? Because most of the time when you go from fear, you're not going to really get what you want anyway.
and that brings something else out. I came from the environment, and when I was in technology, everything almost that we did was very fear-based.
Mhm.
If you don't buy it in a certain amount of time, it's going to increase in price, especially if you're not one of the first 10, only they're going to get that secret sauce. If you, you know, if you don't put in your credit card information, whatever it was, or buy one get one, or risk-free trial, and there was all of these things, or you're going to lose all your hair, and your foot's going to fall off, and your kid's going to be lost, all these things. And one of the things I felt like there was like fear sales marketing, and then I thought there was more of relation ship marketing, and over time, what really made me go, I don't want to do this type of fear marketing, is when I was in a boardroom, Diane, and I might have told you this, but I'm not sure, when the CEO stood up and he slammed the desk and he said, "We need more sick people," and I thought to myself, I thought to myself, if I'm in this world, how can I live as a dad when I'm working for a company that needs more sick people? And I didn't want to be the person who lived a message that wasn't true for what I was doing for my kids, and I left. And I think that that's what I like about what you're saying. It doesn't, if you fear them into something, it really is it is really price, but you don't really instill loyalty, and you don't really create bonds, do you?
No, no, you don't. When it's fear-based, it's absolutely no bond. But obviously, with love or something that you want, it definitely does create the relationship that you want to continue to have.
you know so being an accountant, and I'm gonna keep putting on to this accounting, because you have such a unique dynamic, and it's like me programming, and now I'm in a relationship marketing company, and you're like in accounting, and of course you're writing books as an author. I mean deep, like the senses come in fulfilling, like I still remember you talking about one time you were reading to me about how you felt about your dad and your mom and the fighting, and being significant or not. And but that also, you can touch without fear, but you can still evoke emotions that have meaning and matter, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it is about the relationship, and it's about the senses. I think you touched on that, going into the five senses. And when you're writing, how are you addressing that? Because in the book that I'm writing, Unhook Yourself, I'm telling people to unhook themselves from the stories that are holding them back so that they can move forward. And we all have those stories, right? And I'm doing it through a story format, and I'm evoking an emotion in there. And I've read to you my pieces that
Yes.
it is not necessarily always the emotion that I have. Hopefully, it's the reader, so that they can see how this plays in their life, to unhook from that emotion that they don't need to hold on to anymore, that's holding them back to move them forward. And so in accounting, what I do a lot of times when I'm working with my clients is I just say, tell me a story. Now, it doesn't always have to have a point, but it's amazing when you leave that open-ended what they actually tell me. It's very telling, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing, what's really telling is, one of my coaches once said, and I had to write it down while you were talking, is the bigger the ticket, like the cost,
Mhm.
the more the emotion. And because it's like, you can pick up a 50 cent or $1 or even a $2 candy bar. You don't need any emotion to buy that. If you eat it, you eat it. If you don't, you don't. If you like it, you do. And if you don't, well, don't buy it again. But for some things, it does it improve quality of life? Does it take care of my family? Is it something that can provide a return? Will I create an impact for myself? All those things, but it really takes the driving of other success stories, sometimes even testimonials, to help drive the emotions that I can do that too. Because you brought up, I think, one of the most outstanding points about unhooking yourself. So many people have the fear of going in. And what happens if they don't go in?
They will never have what they seek.
They will never have what they seek. They will always stay in the same place. I say life is not about, playing it stay safe. Life is about, living it at large, because, you look all around you and there's so much life, So let me end like this segment. Just time goes by just way too quickly, doesn't it?
Way too quickly.
Way too quickly, so just, I'm going to plug you a little bit. So like your book, just tell us a little bit about your book, and then tell us a little bit about how we can get a hold of you, Diana.
So my book is Unhook Yourself. And Robert would love that, just because it's obviously a play on my last name, Diana.
Yes.
Hooker. And it's 12 principles of unhooking yourself from any past story, so that you can move forward and live your greatness, live the life that you were designed, which is much greater than what you're living right now. And the best way to get in touch with me is actually through LinkedIn, Diana Hooker on LinkedIn. Also my website, dianalhooker.com. And I actually did remember what it was that Yolanda said that I thought was very good. She was talking about having the resources. So many times people try to do everything themselves versus partnering with a vendor to help them. And that is one of the lines that I do with my accounting business, along with my writing, but is that I inspire others to greatness by allowing them to do what they do best, while I handle the bookkeeping, the financial reporting.
Well, I definitely think that you help serve by getting others to their dreams much quicker. So I'm glad your last name is not Liquor. So at any rate,
Me too.
I just was like, I remember when I was younger, there was always a saying like that. Well, Diana, thank you so much for being on the show today. You are a treat, a delight, and like to see you come around a little bit more and just get your inspiration. But I know it is accounting season, and you still probably have another 4 days. But you came on this show, and I want to say I appreciate you for that.
I absolutely loved when you asked me. I was like, yes, yes, yes. I love being here, and you're going to see me a lot more.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Robert.
Network together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
Wow, Diana, thank you so much again for being on the show, and Yolanda as well. I mean, I feel like we're creating stories within stories, and a lot of it is the setup, and then a lot of it is just the alliteration and the light up. When Diana and I talked about that through the senses, But my last guest who I have on, and I'm going to bring her on right now, Miss Taylor Boone. Hi, Taylor. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, I am so excited about you being here today. And you were able to hear Yolanda, and you were able to hear Diana, who preceded you. And what I love that they brought to us is, it's like Yolanda really, she's like a forensic scientist, isn't she? She needs to meet with her entrepreneur and bring things out of them. And then what I like with Diana is she kind of took us to this next step of, okay, what do I do with what I got? How can I create involvement with the audience? How can I evoke? And I wrote down that word because I love it. We hear inspire a lot, but a word I really don't hear is evoke. And sometimes inspiration feels like it comes from out there. But what I loved about the word evoke is it feels like it comes from in here, you know?
Totally.
Yeah, totally. And it's like the difference between happiness and joy. My favorite word between the two is joy, because joy is internal and happiness many times is derived from external. And so I'm going to steal that word, Diana. I'm sorry, I'm stealing the word evoke. I think it's really good, because what it did, Taylor, is it brought it in to you and me. And what I mean by that is you don't necessarily, with what you do, inspire an action. You actually evoke actions, from that internal sense of self. Yeah, can you inspire? Absolutely. But, when it comes to videography and, photography, when I was in the wedding environment, we talked about evoking emotions, not inspiring emotions. And that's one of the things that I think that you do as a photography, videography expressionist, is you help bring to the world, you hear their words, you take in the senses that they have, and then you create a canvas through photography and videography. So, where I want to start with you as, did you just come naturally into this world, through mom and dad, and all of a sudden one day it was just like, what, if you would have had a cell phone at like 2 months, you'd be taking pictures at that time? Or was this something that kind of evolved with you, and it just grew over time? Tell us a little bit about, your early childhood and growing up a little bit.
Well, I grew up with, I call the older parents. My dad was in his mid-50s, my mom was in her mid-40s, and I was a complete accident. They thought they were done and empty nesters, and I came along, and it wasn't until I was about 11 or 12, my dad had noticed I was always ripping pages out of magazines and putting them in a box. And one day he asked me, like, what do you do with all those? I go, I look at them and study them, because one day I hope to be a photographer. He offered me a deal that day and said, I'll match you. Whatever you come up with, I'll match you, and we'll go buy a camera. And I'm really good with money. I was saving money already, took some extra jobs, and he had no idea I had saved up hundreds of dollars that he had matched. And we went to a camera store, and I'll never forget, I picked out like a $600 camera, and his mouth kind of dropped and was like, okay. But he kept his word and went in on that camera. And then I bought film. That became my next thing for money, is buying film and really photographing anything I could possibly get my hands on, and realizing that when you look at somebody and then when you take a photo, there's two different things. You see something completely different. And at a young age, I really poured into what I was seeing that was different, and framing this subject and putting the light around him and creating an emotion, and then having that show up on a piece of paper back then, on a photo. I just kept at it. I studied that in high school and college, and I went into criminal law because that was the direction I wanted to, go, I thought. And after a couple of years, I was like, no, it's commercial photography. And 20 years later, I'm still doing it. I still love it. I'm still surprised how things transpire and change. And over time, I've developed an intuitiveness that I think is a skill that not every photographer has, and it's intuitive of what's my subject hiding from me, right? Because we all have that safe place. We want to hide something, and what can I pull from that can really resonate and tell their story, and do it in a delicate way that they're willing to let me in. And I call it the wear down stage, where when we start photographing, I do things to kind of wear their energy down so that wall will drop. And then as soon as the wall drops, I step in, gently and say, hey, how about this? Or what if we do this? Or can you give me this? Or can we talk about this? Because we know when we talk about something personal, the emotions around us change. And it's all about perspective and intention, right? Like, you and I could take our cell phones right now and go out and photograph somebody. And we can either just document that photo, or we can create something. To create something, you've got to engage with that subject. You've got to do something to draw that out. And the minute you draw that out and photograph it and capture it, it's different, but there's an intention set there, and there's And that's the part I love. I feel like it's the intention and then it's the intuition, both of those at play.
Well, and there's some other things that I want to bring out a little bit, because I think it takes a little bit more depth to talk about this. And when you work with something or someone, I mean, when you work with someone, it's like Yolanda and Diana. What I see you is if it is me, or if it is your client, so to speak, what they see in them is what they see in them. But what you do is you also take what you see in them. And sometimes, and that's where that wow factor comes in. It's always much bigger and broader and better because of, the intuition and the intention. And I think that's sometimes what we seem to miss, both in our words and our intended audience and our form of expression. And I've been in the industry, for a long time myself in different ways. And, it's really interesting to me because, it's like, how does the mind work? And like in your mind, it may be totally different than, let's say, Diana's or Yolanda's, because, the portrait comes in and they may see letters, right? But for you, is it different than that? When the portrait comes in, do you see colors and images, or is it images and colors with words, or is it just different depending on the day of the week? I don't know. So how does that work with you when you start setting up in your mind what you're going to do for a client?
What it really comes down to, how do they want to be perceived? And it's always words. There's words attached to how they want to be perceived. And then I pull them into the world. What does that look like to you? And let's use samples, because, because of Pinterest, we have a million photos we can look at through and kind of get an idea and put a shot list together. And then after that's done, I always call it the cliffhanger piece of what work, or the stretch piece. Where can we take you and stretch you? Like, while we're right here, where can I elaborate and stretch this moment with you to create something that neither one of us perceived? Neither one of us it wasn't on the shot list. It wasn't something we thought about. And I do that in every single one of my sessions. And I always tell my clients, you got to trust me. And if I take you to a cliff and ask you to jump, I'm going to jump with you. But it's because something's there that we have to photograph. Even yesterday, doing just a basic headshot session for a client, she saw me looking outside the location we were at, and I kept leaving the building to look outside, and finally she's like, what's going on? I said, there's something out here and I don't know what it is, but I think we have to bring the set out here and photograph you out here. And she was like, okay, this wasn't on the shot list. And I said, don't worry. we have to trust it. And after, she walked over to this location between these two trees and just stood there for a minute. And it was just like spotlight hit her, like the music, the orchestra just went, and I just looked at her, and her friend turned and was like, oh my gosh. And I said, don't move. This is what we're looking for. This is what it is. And I took a photo and I ran to her really quickly to show her the back of the camera, and her mouth dropped and she looked around and she's like, I don't even see that looking at what I'm standing in. I don't even see that, but that's right there. And that's the part that truly, I think, it's about framing. It's about composition. It's about all the things that take place to make a great portrait. But it's also, I just have to trust if something whispers in my ear, I got to go with it. And it's almost like someone's tugging on my shirt, like, look over here, look over here, look over here. And that's the part I love after a session. My clients are like, I'm so thankful you went that extra mile, or you did that extra thing, or because they kind of look back and go, that's my defining photo. Like, we had the shot list and we had this recipe, so to speak, but this became the photo that really spoke to me. And that's a part of the magic that I think that can take place once there's that trust and dance. Like, there's dance emotion going on, and that's the magic.
And I've made websites, I've made ads, I've created expressions in different ways, and I've created kind of like click funnel type of campaigns, etc. And I've always said that there's such a beauty when, and I'm gonna go back to the pairing, it's like wine and cheese, you know, good wine, good cheese. It just goes the better, and it's just, there's a music to it. And when it comes to images and words, I feel like if images can create such a big expression, but images, you know, and even videos sometimes can get you lost. You know, it's like the words are the roadmap, you know, but see, the images are actually the natural beauty, and you need both. And because, you know, if I go out into the wild, I can get lost, you know, but I can get lost in the beauty. You know, if I just have the words, I don't get to see the beauty. But if I have the words, they can help self-direct me like a business. The right words with the right images, right? I mean, they can create an expression that evoke the right emotion to get that next client. Wouldn't you agree with that, Taylor?
Oh, completely. And I think we don't realize the psychology piece why people book or hire you or buy a product. There's the psychology piece that goes with it, and it is all of that. We pick up magazine covers for a reason. You strike an emotion with me with a photo, I'll pick up the magazine cover. If the text doesn't match the photo, I'm not going to grab it because my eye's going to glance at the text. And both of those things are chemistry. They both have to grab me, so I'll pick up the magazine. Then when I flip to the center of the magazine to look at the photos, it's that content, it's the text that goes along with telling that story. And I think you have to look at that that plays into why people do business with you. And it's going to the website, it's going to your social media channels, and realizing that customers now are more savvy, subconsciously and consciously, than ever before. And I tell clients all the time, whether you're on Amazon or your product is a consultation, people need 3 or 4 touches from you before they're going to buy. Sometimes they need 7. What are your touches? When I go to your website, do I get a sense of who you are? Your about page is looked at more than any other page on your website. They don't care about price. They care about who they're doing business with. So if your about page is vague and it's just about work, then that's all I think you are. And I feel like that's blah, right? It's just, it's one surface of you.
I mean, you're talking to the choir on that one. I say a person's more likely to do business with you if they know your who and they know your why. Because if I have that in my life, they won't fail me. They won't fail me in their what. They won't. Right. And then I'll pay them for the how. And to me, I would rather people chase me because they believe in me than me chasing them because I got to get them to believe, you know, in me. You know, there's a big difference. And I, you know, there's a push and there's a pull. And you know, and many times, even in my own world, Taylor, when I've done a lot of work in my life, you know, there was a time where, you know, people were like kind of pitching the visual expression and the verbal expression, you know, through written words as they were competing against each other. And I always found that so wrong. I actually remember back in the day, and you'll appreciate this a lot, that when I actually started building websites for the first time, you know, my inspiration was actually going to world-class magazines and looking at the layouts and the beauty of the magazines to help me build the websites. Because I felt like, you know, even though it was a traditional media forum, you know, the visual and the words would pair, and it would actually translate over to the digital world. I mean, it did somewhat. I mean, this is even before CSS, but you know, there is something that's so beautiful about what you said. If the words in the image don't match, it's almost like a person. You know, you see them on stage, and they were so different when you saw them in the ad. It all ties around. That synergy flows around together in all mediums, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It does. And I think we forget, and I'm just going to use this as an example. I did a video about my work years ago that had had great music, but it didn't have my voice. And I left my piece out of it. And then I had somebody say, why don't you explain why you're such a visual content creator, because you were deaf and you're dyslexic, and how that shaped you. And so I added that to my video. And I was surprised, you know, put it out there, was super uncomfortable because I don't like hearing my own voice, like most of us, and shared a little bit of my personal journey that video. And I was surprised the first time I did a speaking engagement and the person introducing me read word for word what I said in that video. And the amount of people in the room that were crying and were moved by that came up to me afterward and said, thank you for sharing such a personal part of your journey. I want to hire you to help me with my brand. I want you to help brand me. And it is my why, right? And hidden in there is my why of why I pick up a camera. It's our stories matter. You know, our obstacles and challenges in life shape us. And that, I want to do business. Why do we love her? Because we know her life wasn't easy. You know, we know she had her challenges. We know she was knocked down. And so there's something relatable to that. And I think we forget that's a valuable piece of our story to do business with somebody.
Yeah. You know, and I'm gonna, the segments go so fast, you know, and I always feel like things go really fast when they matter so much. You know, really, they do. You know, time goes by when things matter so much. And one of the things I was in this mastermind, and you reminded me about it, and I've told this, you know, to people lately. There was this guy who was, does Tesla, and you know, he said that you know, it's that he knows him, you know, he knows himself best. And I think that that's the great art that both Diana, you know, Yolanda, and you do, Taylor, is you guys know yourself best. And by doing that, you're able to reach across the table, so to speak, take that person's hand and get others to know them best. And I think that the better we are about that, that's where true, authentic self comes in, is being able to have people around you where you can be vulnerable enough to trust them in where their message can come through. So, you know, tell us ways. I know we have the information going across the screen, but what are some other ways that people can get a hold of you?
You know, the best way is actually taylorboone.com. Go to the website, hit contact, and connect with me there. I am not the greatest at social media. I dance with it, meaning I'll tap in and check on Facebook and Instagram every once in a while. Those, you can leave me messages there, but the website's usually the best place to grab me.
Well, I appreciate you being on the show today, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I served you well. You know, I always say when you show up, it's my mission to make you the glow stick. So, and I hope I did that for you today. Thank you so much for being on the show, Taylor.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was awesome. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome. And everyone, we will be here next Thursday from 2:30 to 3:30 Pacific Standard Time. And in Arizona, that's actually, it's the same time as the. This is what's crazy about Arizona. Sometimes we're on Mountain, sometimes we're on Pacific, but right now it's Pacific time. But please come here next week and join us for another show of the iNetrepreneur Radio Network. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
You've been watching the iNetrepreneur Show, a production of the iNetrepreneur Radio Network, with host Robert W. Jones. Join Robert each week as he visits with new and exciting guests who inspire, teach, and mentor entrepreneurs worldwide. Follow Robert each Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.